Topic today is shadow data. I'm going to start with you, Tim. Give me some good advice on handling shadow data.
Oh, monitor the registration and all of the details associated with this through your own email system.
That's a good piece of advice. Now, Rowie, I'm going to want you to go the complete opposite. Give me some bad advice on dealing with shadow data.
I say just make your whole environment public. Let everyone look inside your workload and have them help you find the shadow data, right? Like have everyone join in and help find it. That can help.
All right, that's some pretty bad advice. Now, Tim, the challenge to you, do you have worse advice than that?
That was pretty bad, but I'll go with just ignore it.
I like it.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It is, you heard correctly, Super Cyber Friday. Today's topic is hacking shadow data, an hour of critical thinking about discovering and managing sensitive data in unauthorized locations. Our guest today, you just met them, it's Timothy Rohrbaugh, who's the CISO over at JetBlue, and also Rowie Yakovi, who's the co-founder and CTO of Polar Security. And in fact, Polar Security, they're our sponsors for today. Thank you a ton, Polar Security, for sponsoring this Super Cyber Friday event. All right, 7 different ways to participate. I'll go through them very quickly with you right now. Number 1, chat room, which many of you have discovered right now. 2, the topic is worst way to handle or find shadow data. Okay, worst way to handle or find shadow data. Also submit, how do we make it 10% better, the shadow data problem. You can vote in the polls. Join us on video at any time with Bring Me On. If you type Bring Me On, our producer, Aaron, will try to bring any of you on as we possibly can. Also ask a question. If you look at the very bottom of the screen, there's an Ask a Question button. It's actually just the words Ask a Question, but you can click on it. And then you can also vote for your favorite question, too. All right, our schedule today. Good advice, bad advice, worse advice. You just heard it. We want your good ideas and your bad ideas. Get those in. We'll play around to the public interest, our popular new show. We'll have our poll live go over 20 minutes past the hour. That'll be the worst ways to handle shadow data. Please vote for that. Then we'll play our Department of Yes at 30 minutes past the hour. Then we'll have our poll live for making it 10% better. And we'll have the 2 worst idea contenders come and face off. Then we'll have our last question and final advice. And at the end of the hour, everybody stick around for this. We do our meetup, which is a ton of fun. Everyone gets to meet each other. Let me also remind you that next Friday, that'll be May 13th, our topic is Hacking Complexity, an hour of critical thinking about how to consolidate and simplify a security program. Guess what? If you click the button up at the bottom of the screen, you can register for that very event. And it will not take you out of this event. So make sure you do that. That'll be up there for 55 minutes of this 1-hour show. So you've got plenty of time to do that. I will remind you. Click on it, register, because if you do register by 5 p.m. next Tuesday, that's May 10th, you're automatically entered in to win a CISO Series jacket. Now, I'm wearing one of the old classic ones. I actually just ordered a new one for myself, but you can get that as well. All right, let's get to the show at hand. Sorry for all that preamble, if you will, and I got to stop these party lights from going off. I'm going to go back to the blue that we had just moments ago. All right, here's my opening question. Let's just start talking about what we're referring to in terms of shadow data. And I'll start with you, Rowie. What are the different forms of shadow data? How does shadow data sort of come about? And we should also, when you say that, how does it come about? And why is this an issue?
Yeah, I mean there's like an endless number of different forms of shadow data, and it could just be random backups of data that you've done throughout your workload. It can be some, chats that you've sent to your coworkers in Slack. It can be, it could be a new feature that is part of the product and it isn't properly documented. And that feature is holding, it's now storing data that you didn't.
And it's essentially, can I also just add, it's stuff that you just don't know is happening. Yes? Is that kind of a good
and it
way
could
to
also be like a legitimate part of the application. It's not properly, documented. Like that feature. That feature actually is a part of the application. It's not properly documented. So the people that need to know about it don't know about it, so may not be, protected as it should be.
Let me take it over to you, Tim. Um, where does shadow data sort of rear its ugly head? You find?
It has to do with the SaaS providers. Sometimes it's even embedded in, the operating system itself or the ecosystem of one of the providers. The other thing is just, really comes down to the amount of time it takes IT to come back and decision on something, and they just need a solution quickly. And that's how it starts.
Oh, so they need a solution quickly. Sometimes they're creating shadow data because they're waiting for an answer.
They're waiting for an answer. So, every department is trying to work on their own objectives, and they need a solution. And sometimes either they don't know, you haven't published where it needs to go clearly, it doesn't fit their needs exactly, the requirements don't meet, or, they need something fast and they see something free on the outside that they don't believe they even have to sign a contract for.
Yeah. But especially if something's free, then they're like, well, what could be wrong with this? It's free. How could it be damaging?
No, it's not going to cost us anything.
Maybe on the back end. Roy, do you see that issue happening yourself? This can't be a problem. It's free. We can use it.
Yeah, I mean, we sometimes just have people installing Dropbox on general servers that it's not supposed to be there just because of the convenience and that, it's free. I'd say another kind of big enabler is the cloud, right? Because beforehand, if you want to expand your environment, build out new things, add new databases, etc., then you'd have to file a purchase order, talk with your IT department, literally bring over a server, connect it. It'd be hard to do it not by the books. Whereas now, in the cloud environment, you could literally in a few clicks, oh yeah, for my new feature, I'll store some data in a new DynamoDB table or what have you. And I could do it literally in 2 seconds as a developer. So it's much easier for me than going through the whole correct pipeline.
Yeah, but sometimes it's not just the users making a decision to use a SaaS product. Sometimes it's using your own infrastructure. Could be some of your conferencing stuff and doing chat in there, and really not knowing them not knowing where it's going. Teams is one of those that'll stick it in your your Exchange server in your profile without you even knowing it. And then there's over logging, putting sensitive data in logs.
But let's just talk about just the damage of this, because to the average user, I'm just opening this free system. We're just going to have a chat online. What damage could it do? I'm going to ask the question: what damage could it do? And again, I know that question has a very wide spectrum to it, but Tim, what damage can this do?
Well, the problem is that we're looking at what criminality is perceiving as a value that they want to go after. And so if we know where that data is, we create enclaves, we put controls around it, we put monitoring around it, we spend a lot of money in infrastructure and labor associated with it. If we don't know it's there, then you're bypassing all of that. And then it becomes something that can just be exfiltrated and we have no visibility into it or don't know the value. And you have
no idea what data is actually being created too at that time.
Yeah.
It could be benign, let's set up a party information that you wouldn't be that upset about, or something far more damaging, hence my comment of the wide spectrum. Roy, you have seen this kind of thing. So how long across the spectrum do you see sort of damaging shadow data, if you will?
So what do you mean by long across the spectrum?
So what I mean to say is there is not all data has equal importance. Let's just say that, just because data is being created. Yeah. Some could be benign, nobody cares, we don't need to secure it.
Yeah.
And then there's some holy crap, how the heck did that get out there? We're in serious trouble. This could literally sink us as an organization. So what have you seen in terms of that's from the two extremes of the spectrum, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, you have I'd say there are a few categories, right? You have the general, the PII, PCI, HIPAA data, the more compliance stuff, which is, the obvious and easy answer. But you also have just, sometimes companies have specific customer data that they kind of store as part of the application that they also don't want like to go out and be public. So that's kind of another example. So not necessarily PII, but hey, this data, I don't want my the world to know like exactly what flights Tim was on for the past like 20 years or what have you. And yeah, and I'd say those are kind of and then another example that we've seen is companies where they don't necessarily store PI or stuff like that, but they have IP. They have data the company has worked on a lot of man hours, like machine learning algorithms, stuff like that, where they don't want that data to be public. I mean, they worked hard on it, and it's part of their IP. It'll be damaging to the organization if it's public. So that's kind of another example.
Yeah, I mean, along those same lines, right? There's also code base, right? There's keys. There's all kinds of things embedded in this that ends up getting shared. So all of it can be damaging in different ways, but for sure, like you said, the stuff that will get you in trouble from a regulator standpoint are, PII or regulated data like that.
All right, Jeff Reich asks a question that I think this is the reason shadow data exists. And I'm gonna claim this could be the failure of a security department, or it also could be the failure of it's tough for security to move at the speed of business. And so I'm setting up what I think it might be. But Jeff says, why do your supported options? So why do what you suggest we use for communications for creating data seem more difficult to use than these alternatives? Now, Jeff's really putting like the cart before the horse when he makes a claim like that. But Tim, I'm sure it's either they think it's too complicated or they don't know it exists, which you had referenced earlier.
Yeah.
So what are the kind of the responses you get when you find out that people have been creating shadow data? Like, we didn't know it exists, or this thing's too much of a pain in the ass?
First, let's not conflate security and IT, right? They don't necessarily go together. So it's IT's job to create, they're the custodians of this data.
Sure.
And they create the technology platforms that allow it to be done. Security just makes sure that it actually complies with policy.
Good point.
Regulatory point. So from that standpoint, it's not knowing where it needs to go. So sometimes it's just a lack of communication. And over time, stuff's constantly changing. So I think it's awareness. The next part is that people come into the organization and they're not kept up to date on what it is. And so they're doing the things that they did before, at a prior company or position. And they just say, well, hey, this could be advantageous for us. And then it's other departments which don't know a different one set up a contract. And so it just becomes, distributed. And there's just, a lack of, let's say in the RACI chart, somebody identified as accountable for all this.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask. Why don't you answer quick, Roy, and then I got another question for you, Roy. Go ahead.
I kind of agree. I feel like most of the time it's just people a lack of communication and going kind of the easy route of doing what you know, and not necessarily you're now a new organization, not learning how things are done here. So yeah, agree pretty much.
All right, go ahead, Tim.
I mean, I just say one thing, and this is where I think if people think about from an individual standpoint, if it was their data, how would they care for it? Is that a place that they'd want it to go? And if they're truly aware of the risks, then they might make a different decision, or they might ask for advice. So part of it's just it's the onus is on us to educate folks, and I don't think that's being done effectively.
All right. I got a good question from Jonathan Waldrop. And by the way, people, you have 6 more minutes to get your bad ideas in, of which there have been plenty of really good bad ideas in. Hold on, I was going to quote someone. What was it? I like this one from Brian Colt. Create a bounty program that rewards employees for snitching on each other for creating shadow data.
Kind of like Russia.
There you go. There you go. They're not watching. I can say that, right?
I like David in the chat. Screenshots of shadow data aren't shadow data, right? I don't think it works like that, David, but maybe.
You know what the greatest exfiltration device is your phone with a camera.
Oh yeah.
All right. So this was something actually you guys both brought up early, but I want to sort of make it super clear, and I'm going to have you answer this first, Roy. Jonathan says, is the shadow data problem a specific issue embedded in shadow IT? Can you still have problems with shadow data in the unlikely event you don't have shadow IT? So is it possible to have no shadow IT? We're completely locked down in that, but we still have shadow data. And I think we referenced in that they're using sort of certain parts haven't been secured within the application. Yes, Roey, is that how it happens, or does it happen in other ways?
I mean, shadow IT is like a big driver we talked about in the cloud. You're spinning up new things, but
Right.
it can also be in so many, unexpected places, which isn't necessarily shadow IT, right? I mean,
So
Tim
give us some
kind of touched
examples.
upon this of like log files. The application is logging stuff. You just have like, sensitive data in log files. That's kind of a classic example. But just in general, the companies are now, you have versus, let's call it AI, machine learning days, you have so many more stakeholders of the data, people that are touching it, be it, marketing that need it, data scientists, data engineers, you have all these data pipelines. So as more people are touching the data, it's like more, opportunity for shadow data and just that general data sprawl. So it's not necessarily like shadow IT, it's a result of so many people touching the data that just being moved between places, and it's hard to kind of keep up.
You said the perfect word, sprawl. Great. That's what it is. I mean, you don't have to have shadow IT to have things like iCloud being misconfigured, or, to have Teams misused, any chat. Where's that data going? And then you have, like you just said, with respect to your applications, there's constantly things that are either you didn't expect to happen, like negative use cases, which cause the data to be, spooled out someplace that you just didn't know.
All right, hold on.
It's time to play a brand new game.
All right, I promise, even though we've been playing this game now, this is our 6th time playing it, and we still call it a brand new game. We are actually going to have a real bumper for this because this has become a popular game here. The game is called The Public Interest. The audience knows how to play because they're going to play along as well. It's pretty simple. You know how to play this. Here we go. First question: most average monthly search queries. What do you think? It's either shadow data or hidden data. Which gets more searches? I will ask both of you.
Hidden data.
Hidden data.
I'd say hidden. Yeah.
Hidden
data. Shadow is still kind of new.
No, shadow data is more popular. So it's a good thing we titled this shadow data.
Yeah.
So 0 for both of you. All right.
Off to a good start.
Let's go to the next one. Most average monthly search queries: A, data forensics, or where are my files?
Where are my files? B.
What do you think, Roey?
I feel like A, like who just searches where am I? Like what response do they expect to get? I'll say A.
A? You are correct. Where are my files?
No way.
Seriously, no, I think Roey kind of hit the nail on the head. What the heck are you going to expect when you type in where are my files into Google? All right, number 3, most average monthly search queries for security issue or privacy concern. Which do you think is worse? Or
privacy
not worse.
Concern.
What do people show more concern? I'm sorry, you said A?
No, B.
B, privacy concern. What do you think, Roey?
Man, these ones are hard. I'd say I feel A because people don't really think of.
People are emotional about B.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, you know what? That makes sense because we're talking about people, not so. B as well. I'll say B.
You're going B. Okay. By the way, it's 1-0. Roey is in the lead here, and the correct answer is security issue. Both of you got this one wrong. All right. Last one. Let's see how you're going to redeem yourselves. Last one. Most average monthly search queries: data discovery or find data?
I'd say data discovery. Like find data is, again, it's like what do you expect to? It's very general.
Yeah, but we're talking about them. I'll go with B.
I'll
go for the 0.
B?
Yeah, I'll go with B.
We're splitting the decision, and data discovery again.
Yes. 0.
Did not go well for you, Tim, at all. But you got 2 correct.
Those
Good
weren't
job
easy,
there,
man. Those were
Roey.
Yeah.
Excellent job. By the way, everybody, you have no more time to get your bad ideas in because they've already come, and we got a ton of questions here, and let's get to them. All right, I think, Guy, we actually answered one of your questions. Guy asked a bunch of questions, and we know, but I think we need to address we've talked enough about how it's created. Let's talk about how we find the darn thing. All right, so Guy asked this question. It is a question we should be spending majority of our time talking about, and that is, how can I find shadow data in my cloud? I will begin with you, Roey. How the heck do you find it?
So there's kind of a lot of it's currently there's no clear way. It's a bit of a manual process, right? You and these are things kind of we see with people we talk to. If it's basically you're someone who's in charge of finding it, right? So where do I start? And you start interviewing your development team. Like you literally start interviewing the R&D and understanding what data the application is generating, what interactions there are, those data pipelines. You start trying to build out this graph or architecture of where the organization is holding data, and that's kind of where you start off. That's currently it's quite manual, and then we also have just companies that literally maintain an Excel spreadsheet of where their data is, and try to keep it updated. So that's kind of it's quite manual.
All right. So there's three ways. First way is to actually do surveys. The second way is to actually monitor people, monitor the traffic inside your network and remote where they're using this outside.
So are you just logging traffic at this point?
Logging traffic, and specifically for this. And then the third is to have technology that actually goes out and starts to actually crawl through it. And all three of those need to be deployed at the same time is the key.
Roey, does your product speak to that?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the things that we do here at Polar.
Feel free. I'm opening up the door. Feel free to explain what Polar Security does. All right. At this point, you got the floor.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of touched upon the third point that Tim said, because monitoring the traffic in the cloud environment is quite difficult to just monitor the traffic, but you also miss out on a lot of that shadow data that was just moved around that's not necessarily through the network, right? Just generated a random, like a classic example. I'm a developer and I just pushed out a new feature to production, and I'm kind of worried about what it will do to our data. So I'll just make a quick copy of it to the side, just in case anything happens. And obviously no one knows about that data, right? It's just, so yeah. And what you have to do is really kind of understand and scan continuously scan the environment to understand where that shadow data is located, right? Because it can be in so many places. It can be, in those managed services that Tim talked about. It could be just in general sprawl throughout servers, database copies, databases that you didn't know about. So you have to kind of scan, but kind of in a smart way. It's kind of what Polar does, more sampling, understanding what data was generated, last, and kind of in that way understand where the data itself is located. And this is done in a continuous way because we've talked about the data sprawl, right? So it's always happening. People will always be, moving data around. So doing this one-time thing, which, that Excel spreadsheet isn't enough, right? You have to continuously do it.
Yeah, well, because data is constantly being created. Like, people just don't go, hey, we're going to create shadow data on Wednesday the 5th. It's going to happen on other days.
Yeah, and so many people are now touching the data in the company. It's crazy. It's a bit scary when you think about it, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I had heard some stat, and oh God, I'm going to so butcher this, but it sort of, I want to sort of more echo this more in the spirit of this happening. And Tim, you can speak to this, is that there can be sometimes 20 copies of some data or a file in different versions in multiple locations. Like, that I got to assume is a chronic problem, is the multiple versions of the data. Yes, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, it is, especially when you're talking about if it's used for like, batch file inputs and things like that. They might create a backup of it so they could do point in time recoveries. There's all of that. But I want to get to the key point here. It's not that the data is sprawling. It's that data that is of consequence. In other words, it can be monetized. It's something that has a regulatory oversight associated with it. I hate to use this word, but it is sensitive. It has some value
No,
that you
that's
place.
that's the appropriate word to use.
No, I think the days of data classification policies are done. They were long done, probably when I left the government long ago, and there needs to be more emphasis on data governance, which allows for the fluid definition of data that follows, what state law is doing, what you all in turn considers valuable.
All right. Oh, we are. Hold on. We are. Oh, did we get the poll up? Yes, we got the poll up. I'm sorry, I haven't mentioned this. So everyone has about 5 minutes to vote on the best bad idea poll, of which a bunch of you have already voted on. Please vote some more. Please vote some more, and we're going to be playing in really now 4 minutes. We're going to be playing the Department of Yes. So get ready for that. And also, by the way, I don't know how many did. We want, we need, my producers tells me we don't have enough 10% ideas. So as always, this is the thing that I always kind of stress with their audience. They have no problem coming up with lots and lots of bad ideas. They struggle to come up with good ideas, which.
Yeah, and mine was so bad. There has to be some way to make it a bit better, right?
Yes. So again, we don't need the grand solution for Shadow Day. Just your one tip on how you deal with an aspect of shadow data. What are some creative ways we can start looking into shadow data? Like, for example, one of the classic kind of creative ways you can find shadow data is just looking at credit card usage, like corporate credit card usage, or what people have expensed to see what, this is more of a shadow IT issue, but that, brings itself to shadow data. Are there some other sort of creative ways that we can sort of reveal shadow data, Rowie?
Yeah, I think a big element of it is understanding, because there's of course the kind of continuously scanning to finding it, but another element that can really help out here is understanding just general data movements, because once you understand how the data is moving and flowing through the organization, then it's more easy to like on the spot detect data move shadow data, right? So if you kind of, let's say you initially scan and then you find you find your data, and there's a subset of it that's it's legitimate data, it should be part of the application, and now you could kind of lock it down, make sure that only the proper people have access to it, but you'll still have the sprawl. But if you could understand how that data is moving throughout the organization constantly, then it'll be much easier to find new instances of that data, i.e., shadow data you didn't know about. So it's a bit of a more efficient way to look about it. Let's not always just try to scan everything. Let's focus on we call the crown jewels, and understand how they're moving through the organization to see if they've moved in kind of, let's say, unauthorized ways that shouldn't have happened.
Are you able to tag like essentially the crown jewels like Rowie described, Tim? And are you doing that?
You can. I have a different suggestion, though. I mean, COVID changed some of this for us, right? So one is everybody's looking for exfiltration, right? Data moving. You can also take that same tooling and point it internally and look at movement internally and equate where there's changes in pattern by your users, by your applications. But then COVID came along, and then we have a lot of users who aren't inside the environment necessarily. And so you have to extend that monitoring to the VPNs, to the endpoints. And that's where I think some of us have spent some time over the last year or so.
All right, we have a call that just came in.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right, I have not actually even looked at all the votes that have come in, but we have some bad ideas that have been heavily voted up. And we're going to start with the one that I had mentioned earlier. I think this was from Brian Colt. And I will start with you, Tim. Again, it's the Department of Yes. You have to give me the reason why you want to deploy this idea, what the silver lining is. You cannot be facetious. And to remind you, he said, create a bounty program that rewards employees for snitching on each other for creating shadow data. Why do you want to do this?
It's a great way to do security awareness. Actually gets people in tune with the concept of, finding flaws.
That is correct. It is people are, and there's a financial motivation around the security awareness as well. We'll add that. Rowie, why do you want to do this?
It gets it's a reason for people that are working in remote environments to talk with one another more. It's like
Roy, I just want you to know that not doing well at this game is not a slam against you as a security professional.
I would hope so. Yeah.
All right. Now, this one I believe is from John Procap because I saw it coming by. I'm going to start with you. You're going to try to answer this one. Now, although you know what? I don't know. You're Israeli, so I don't know if you're actually familiar with this game. I'm going to throw it to you, Tim, because it may be a little bit more of an American reference here. So I don't know if you're familiar with the game that is referenced here. But label all sensitive data Polo, and then run around the internet yelling Marco to force it to reveal itself. So, are you familiar with this game, Marco Polo, Rowie?
Yeah, I am.
You are? Okay.
I usually play like in the pool Marco Polo with eyes closed.
Exactly.
So repeat what he said one more time.
Label all your sensitive data Polo. So quote Polo.
Yeah.
And then you run around the internet yelling Marco to force it to reveal itself. Tim, why do you want to do this?
Because that's the whole concept of labeling. It allows you to actually find the data based on an exact search term.
Correct. All right, Rowie, why do you want to do this?
Dude, Tim totally took mine. I was gonna say like, oh, you label it and that way you find it, and it's like that's perfect. That's what we were looking for.
I'll give it to you, but you can't give another reason why you want to do this.
It's a good way to market. It's like a underground way to market your company. It's like, oh, this JetBlue has this new awesome thing where they, Marco and Polo and underground marketing.
I'm not giving that one to you.
I'm terrible at this.
Oh, Rowie, it was. You were doing it well, and then I don't know what happened there. Anyways, regardless, that is Brian Colton, John Procap. Brian, John, be ready in about 8 minutes to come on to defend who has the truly worst idea. Very creative, both of you. I love both of them. Both incredibly stupid, too. I'm also going to throw that out as well. All right, let's get back to our questions here. And so Guy asked another good question here. He asked the question that pretty much is the question. The whole thing is how the heck do we find shadow data, which we've been discussing. But he asked, is shadow data, and I'm going to throw this to you, Rowie, more common in modern architectures like microservices? Like, where are we seeing more examples of it? And is it in microservices? I think also, Tim, you mentioned, SaaS. That's it. But what say you, Rowie?
Yeah, well, so we talked a bit about how the cloud environment enables R&D developers to, with a few clicks, upload new data stores, make backups, move things around. And so you have that, and you also have just the speed that R&D is running now, agile. You always got to get new features out. And that's also kind of pushing the proliferation of shadow data. And also how applications are the modern application design today. So kind of take you guys in the Wayback Machine to like pre-cloud days, pre-microservices. You had like this monolithic application. You had a few databases, and it's quite easy to like understand, lock them down, understand where they are, who's accessing them. Now we fast forward to the cloud environment and microservices. So every microservice has its own kind of like database, and it's very easy for developers to upload. Oh, I'll upload a new as a feature. It has its own little database, and that's makes it even more hard to kind of go after this problem and understand where it's all located.
So,
I kind of say no. I mean, microservice is probably less of the problem. It's proportional to the people who have their hands on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the developers or the sysadmins, DevOps folks. It's really just the users who are generating a lot of this.
Tim, I want to go back to something you had said earlier. You said there's three things you have to have in place and have them continuously. Do you remember what they were, the three things?
Yeah, there's three ways to basically
Yeah.
come to an understanding of this. Number one is a survey,
Mhm.
right? That's actually asking them. Number two is to monitor them.
Right.
And then the third is to crawl the infrastructure with technology.
Okay. So going back to those three, what percentage of your security program's misery index with dealing those three is shadow data? Is it a high percentage? Is it getting worse? Is it manageable? What do you think of like the misery index on that?
You mean like it is like which one of them is more effective against the
No,
misery?
not effective. Like no. I just want to set up that you're doing it that way. But in terms of how is dealing with finding shadow data and the volume of it being created, if it's heavy or low, is it greatly affecting your security program?
It's a long-term problem. It's like technical debt, right? It just gets worse and worse over time. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
one of those things that you have to put a stake in the ground, you're right? And probably the best way anybody can do it when they walk into a new, role responsibility or even just want to approach this, it's really monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at where people are connecting, where those sessions are showing data going, and then try to put some logic behind it and rationale, and then look for contracts.
Yeah. By the way, we have just a few minutes left. If you have your 10% better ideas, I know we need more of those. Get those in. Prove to me you can come up with more better ideas than bad ideas, which, by the way, we've yet to do on a single show. It's always like a 1 to 10 ratio, practically, it seems, of good ideas to bad ideas. What have you just seen as the sort of the misery index yourself, Rowie, in the sense that how painful this problem is becoming for companies?
Well, I think it's like it's something that it's kind of has been an unsolved problem, right? You talk with people, and they can't confidently say you like basic questions. Where is the sensitive data in your organization located? And it's very difficult for them to answer these questions.
By the
Like
way,
they don't.
we've had this conversation umpteen times, and it is a super difficult question to answer.
Yeah, and I mean, and like as Tim said, right, you have to start from somewhere. So a lot of times it's, as I mentioned, it's interviewing the developers, just trying to like scan, maintaining spreadsheets. Um, so it's a painful process, and it takes time, and it's manual, which is why we kind of thought there's a better way, right? Being able to scan, but not only just scan in a random way, but in a more smart fashion, because as time goes on, there will only be more and more data, and just scanning it all won't be scalable. So
Mm-hmm.
we also kind of worked on making it being possible doing this smarter ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it sucks for those companies that's
No,
in
but
the future
I think you both made a good point. Like, if you're not doing this now, start doing it, because you don't know how much of a backlog you may have.
Oh yeah, like you have to
You,
start from somewhere. So
you can't protect what you don't know.
Right. I mean, yeah, we've heard this a classic line again and again. And I'm sure, and by the way, I'm sure you have both seen environments where people say, oh, we know our shadow data, or not our shadow, but we know our data is here. And then you just do a simple scan. I'm like, well, hate to break it to you, it's also in all these places as well. I mean, that.
Yeah, I mean, we so kind of a story. One of one of the companies that we work with, they thought they didn't have any PCI data because they use third parties for credit cards. And what they found out was that one of their applications had debug dumps. So local debug dumps, and those debug dumps, like part of the stack trace, had credit cards in them. So it's kind of we talked a bit about logs, where it's a big pain. So that's another kind of example of boom, data that you had no idea was there. You thought you didn't even have any credit cards in your environment. So it happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable, and it's again one of the classic cases of I'm just trying to do my job right now. All right, I want to bring on both Brian and John, because we're going to be playing worst we want the worst idea contenders to come on and have it out to determine who has the worst idea. Tim and Rowie will be the judges here. And also, can we get the 10% better poll up? Please put the 10% better poll up because we want that up as well. And there is Mr. John Procap, who has the great Marco Polo idea. Your audio is not on, John, so check to make sure you're not muted. And there's Mr. Brian Colt at the bottom of the stairs. What is your configuration? I always find that your desk is at the bottom of the stairs here. What is the setup here?
Yeah, Brian, you were on last week too. You're very good at giving bad ideas, which is a bit concerning. I must
He's
say.
quite talented at that.
It's very concerning for me also. Yes. No, I'm in a townhouse, so this is like the basement area at the bottom of the stairs.
Okay, got it.
My wife works upstairs, and
all right, John, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
John,
Yeah, we got you.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, John, yes, we can hear you. Okay, great. All right, great that you're both on. Brian, yours was the first one. Reiterate what yours was, and again, you're defending why your idea is truly the worst, and specifically against John's Marco Polo idea. Feel free to trash him in saying that yours idea is worse.
Well, my idea is worse. My idea was creating a bounty program so employees snitch on each other for creating shadow data. And it's an absolutely terrible idea because you'll just make employees more paranoid about doing anything in case, they don't want the Stasi to come after them. And it's worse than John's because it's actually feasible. You could actually implement this.
But I'm gonna throw this out here. It's actually not that bad an idea because you actually could put a pretty strong stop to shadow data. Like a good amount. Like I don't see a lot of people pulling out their credit cards to get a new application if you had people looking over each other's shoulders. So I think a significant portion could end. Consider this for Polar Security, by the way, Rowie, to add this bounty program because it could actually work. All right, John, what do you think? Why is your Marco Polo idea far worse than Brian's?
Definitely a worse idea because it's not at all feasible. It's based on circular reasoning. In order to label all your data with Polo, assuming you'd have to know where it is in the first place, which solves 80% of your problem. The biggest problem with shadow data is you don't know where it is, so you can't secure it. But
if you could do your thing, your idea would actually be pretty good. If I could label it all Polo.
But you can't. It's based on a false premise, so it doesn't matter what follows that. Whereas the other option is turning people in. Well, let's take his idea and make it a really good idea. You make it an informant system, but it's anonymous. So there's data out in this cloud, and David put it there, but you don't say that David put it there. You just say someone put it there, and then the IT team or the security team can fix the problem without fixing the blame. I think that's a much more effective solution, whereas my idea is completely infeasible and indefensible, so therefore it's a terrible idea.
Okay. Now I throw this to both Tim and Rowie to determine who truly has the worst idea. Tim, who do you think?
I guess that's the whole flaw in labeling, right? It's I think the labeling idea is just awful.
Okay. All right, Rowie, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll go with Tim here. I mean, I'll say it's an awful idea, but also for the uniqueness, Marco Polo. It's So
okay,
John as well.
All right. So I will also just say again, if your idea was feasible, it actually wouldn't be that horrible idea. And similarly with Brian,
I agree, but it starts with a dumb premise, and it's a CISO dad joke.
And,
so
Brian, while it will bring your idea will bring employee morale to below zero, it actually
some might get rich.
A good amount
Some employees might get rich.
Yeah, and the employees actually could be an upside for the employees as well. So,
David Richardson just pointed out in the chat, my idea doesn't work if more than one company implements it because then you find everyone's data.
There you go. Oh, good.
So it's even worse than that.
I would also throw out this that. What I was saying is I've worked at employees where the morale is already pretty darn low. So adding Brian's idea really wouldn't change a damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it
you're
could
saying
actually
might
bring
as well
morale up because some people would actually get paid for some people. Just throwing that out there. All right. I want to thank John. I want to thank Brian. Those both beautiful, horrible ideas. Just great. All right. We've got about 15 minutes left. Excellent. And by the way, everyone stick around for our meetup portion. We're going to have fun in our meetup right after this as we get FaceTime with each other. By the way, Tim, are you looking to hire? Yes? Tim?
Always.
Always looking to hire. All right. Stick around for our meetup portion because there's always great people to meet. It's a great networking portion as well. So, and Roy, I think you're hiring too still. Yes?
Yeah, man, we're always looking to hire.
Everyone's looking. There's rarely anyone in working in cyber that's not looking to hire. It's almost everybody. Anyways, if you have not registered for next Friday's video chat or Super Cyber Friday, hacking complexity, please do that now because that's going to disappear in about 10 minutes. I do want to mention some of the good ideas that have come in because I think my sufficient shaming brought in a few more good ideas. And I'm going to throw this to both you, Roy, and Tim. Explain to me why this is such a voted up. This is the most voted up 10% idea. Gradually move the organization to an API centric data access storage. Why would that improve things, you think?
Well, you have a choke. You have a choke point.
Yes.
So yeah, then you have the evidence that you need to figure out.
So
who's
everything
submitting
would
what.
be going through APIs, and you'd very visibly see everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you know anyone who actually does that?
No, but that is part of what even SaaS solutions use. So there is
Yes.
API interfaces for most of those.
Right.
But I like the idea of like the entire organization not having direct access to storage and have to go through an API.
Not bad, but that makes it.
I don't think it's not a 10% just because it's you have to build it to cost
Yes,
prohibitive.
it's going to take more than 10%. Still, we'll take it as a good idea. Roy,
Yeah.
what do you think? And whose idea was that? Speak up, by the way. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps there being a choke point to the data. But I guess it's kind of a chicken and egg because to create that choke point, you need to know where all the data is. So where you put it, like where do you place the data behind? And I guess another risk would be if that choke point, whatever, have your proxy, if it falls, then you got a business problem now.
Yeah, I would say that what's interesting about it, it's not just the users, it's also the application. So then you can attribute all data movement to a user account.
Yeah, that's part of building out the flows, understanding how the application is kind of interacting with the data, which is also kind of something we do just without having to like put that choke point in place. But it does kind of help part of the problem. But we kind of talk about how a lot of shadow data isn't necessarily it could just be copied data. I copied something from A to B. It's not necessarily like through the infrastructure. It could just be something I downloaded, it's sent over to someone. So it's a way forward, but there's still some tuning.
By the way, I want to give credit to Matthew Bybee. He's the one who suggested moving to an API-centric data access storage. One of the other good ideas spoke to what you had said, Tim, about doing a survey. Just said offer a shadow data bounty. Let me ask, how much do you discover just asking, hey, is anybody using something else that we don't know about?
I mean, this is the real 10% suggestion. And the reason is because it achieves two things. Maybe it's not going to tell you all of the places that it's at, but what it really gives you is a chance to use, security awareness training in the form of actually data acquisition or information gathering. And
is there ever like if you see something, say something kind of attitude at the company with regards to data, shadow data creation?
No, I mean, the thing is, you're just trying to find people to help, and then if they understand it, then they become evangelists in their department. So I think it's a great way to start a dialogue and to, make people aware of what's going on and what's of value. You have basically the onus is on you to then say, this is what's sensitive. This is what people are taking. This is what puts us at risk.
And that was Craig Irwin, by the way, who had the shadow
Good job, Craig.
which, by the way, ironically, we had a bad idea of the same idea. So it can go both ways.
Yeah, that's
Rowie, what were you about to say?
No, like I feel, I agree that definitely a great benefit of that is the education part, right? Of letting people need to understand the impact that data has. A lot of time, you're just trying to do the thing that's right for you, for your environment. Like an example, like just imagine how many duplicate data pipelines companies have, just because they never like really understood or checked if they had a different one. So yeah, education is very important so people know the impact of that data can have. So I agree that like interacting with the employees and with the users definitely helps, and part of that is really that survey.
Matthew Bybee asked a good question because this is something you brought up, Tim, and he's asking, what's the next better solution? It was mentioned that data classification is not working and or dead. What is then the next iteration or evolution in this area that will actually solve our problems in terms of, I guess, identifying, discovering data or sensitive data, as you mentioned? So if that doesn't work, what do we do?
It's a little bit of semantics here, but it's really about data governance. And so because if you say, for instance, this is the problem, right? Some state decides that a sensitive data element is email address. Okay. But then you have it defined that email address requires encryption and all of these controls, but you can't do that because the underlying protocols need it to be clear text, and it's all kinds of places. And so it's the data elements which actually become of value to criminals, which is why we're doing this. And it changes all the time, and the regulators are changing it. So the data governance program identifies who the custodians are, who is supposed to evaluate this, how you communicate changes in sensitivity, and then changes in direction, what we're telling the broader employees to do.
Mm-hmm. What's your advice in terms of identifying the sensitive data if we can't classify it, Rowie?
I mean, I feel that it's again a lot of education. So when people, so you can kind of, we're talking, if you're having like more proper SDLC processes, etc., then I've talked about how when you're building out the architecture of your application, you don't necessarily have to classify. You already know beforehand. It helps knowing where your application is holding sensitive data and then putting guardrails in there. So I guess part of that can be beforehand already kind of knowing more or less where in your workload you have sensitive data. But I still believe that I'm not sure I totally agree that data classification is dead, right? I feel like something I kind of we're always working on, Polar as well, and there's always obviously there's always room for improvement, but the cloud as well has kind of enabled us to use various ways to improve our data classification using various metrics, logs, etc. So I don't think quite agree that's dead. But education in general will help even if you don't have data classification.
All right. Before we close out, because we got just 7 minutes left, and again, if you have not registered for next week, go ahead and do that now. But let's just talk about the proliferation issue. Are there either managerial or technical controls that can limit the proliferation of shadow data? I'll start with you, Rowie, actually, on this one. What do you think? We're not at the discovery phase. Like, let's just limit its creation. What managerial and technical controls can we put out there?
Yeah. So again, making sure that if I'm a manager, I'm trying to make sure that my employees understand the importance of data and are more careful with it, but also trying to in the processes that the company is building out applications, building out the workloads to better incorporate and document where the application, where the workload is storing sensitive data. So that's kind of more from a manager perspective, kind of to encourage and get people to further document. So you have something to look at when people ask you, "Hey, where in your workload do you have sensitive data?" "Oh, I have all of this documentation that can help me, gives me a good starting point." From a more technical aspect, it's again, once you have a kind of understanding where the data is that needs to be, that of at least, you can at least put guardrails on them regarding who has access, what flows they have, right? So who can access the data, what can access the data, and kind of make sure only the people that need it have access to it and the service that need it. Because, if more people have access to it, that creates more of a sprawl.
Not
right?
everybody needs to access it.
Yeah,
And
if I have
because
like 10 data stores that I know that I need, and I have 100 applications that are interacting with it and 100 people, then obviously there'll be more shadow data that's created from that data versus if only 10 people. So you gotta lock down the access to the data. And another more technical thing is moving to infrastructure as a code, right? That can also help a lot. Kind of mitigates those examples I was giving of, hey, I'll just spin up a new database for my application. When you kind of shift left in that, it helps as well.
All right, Tim, let me give me a 30-second answer on this.
Real quick,
wrap up.
Okay, there's two answers to that. Number one is segment your network. So use segmentation to limit access to the places that it shouldn't be based on those populations applications. The other is to actually do inline monitoring and actually deny access to those SaaS and repositories where it's not assigned to you. They don't use single sign-on, whatever.
All right. Let me wrap this up. I'm going to get you guys have the final word on this. Get ready, by the way, to change that link at the bottom. So next Friday is Hacking Complexity, an hour of critical thinking about how to consolidate and simplify a security program. You want to register, click this very second because it's going to change. Remember, if you register by 5 p.m. next Tuesday, you're automatically entered in a raffle to win not one of these older jackets, but one of the newer, cooler jackets. And I want to thank Polar Security for sponsoring this very episode of Super Cyber Friday. We greatly appreciate your support. And Roy coming on, thank you very much. And also, I want to mention, Tim, I'm going to thank you as well in just a second, but hold on. Starting in 90 minutes from now, we are also doing another live show that is called Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review. Sean Bowen, who's the CISO of World Fuel Services, will be giving his take on the week's cyber news. It's always a fun show to listen to that. And stick around for a meetup. Go ahead, click. Oh, there it is. It's already there. Click on the link. You can do it right now. Click on the link at the bottom to join our meetup. And we're going to do that immediately following this in exactly 3 minutes. So do that. Click that link at the bottom. Also, tell your friends to join us. We do this every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We want more cyber friends in here. And if you want to sponsor Super Cyber Friday, you know what you could do? You could just email me at david@cisoseries.com. We have openings in July. We'd love to have you on board. All right. I give you now each about 45 seconds each to give a last call on this topic. And I'm going to have you, Roy, speak first. And if you're looking to hire and anything else for that matter. Roy, any last thoughts on this and how people can learn more about Polar Security?
Yeah, I'm learning Polar Security. You can go to the site polar.security. We have everything there. The problems that we kind of talked about now is something that we are working on solving, right? So understanding where the data is, where that shadow data is, automatically understanding who can access it, the flows, who, what, to better understand the proliferation, find it in a better fashion. So that's bit about Polar. And of course, we're always hiring basically all engineering positions. For me, it's kind of more on the Israel side. So for all people in Israel, if you're listening, and yeah, and I hope I still have time. But yeah, if you probably have this problem in your company, first step, like I agree with Tim, start from somewhere. So just like at least start working on mapping out and figuring out where you have your data, and then continue from there. But start from somewhere.
Okay, I'll come at it from a different angle, which is once you get into a more mature organization, create shadow data and make sure you use what's called deception technology. So that becomes your loss, right? Which is you're losing something that actually you build into your system to detect for. And so you'll know when data is being exfiltrated.
Oh, that's very, very smart.
Nice.
Put a little canary out there for them to see. Anyways, Tim, you are hiring, correct? And why do people want to work for JetBlue? Give me 15 seconds. Why do you want to work for JetBlue?
Free flights.
Because you have a lot of free time to travel.
There you go. Of course. We were having a discussion about the anxiety of being on standby when you do get free tickets, too. All right. I want to thank Tim Rohrbaugh, who is the CISO over at JetBlue, and also Roei Yacovi, who is co-founder and CTO, correct? Do I have that right?
Yep.
Over at Polar Security. Thank you, everybody. Join us. Click the button up at the bottom of the screen. Let's join in the meetup. We see you there. Aaron, take us out of here.